In 1256, the 26-year-old Ruknuddin Kursha, then leader of the faction globally recognized as the Assassins, stood atop the ramparts of Mandus fortress, gazing over the valley below. For 166 years prior, his lineage had instilled dread in monarchs, caliphs, and emperors alike. They had been responsible for the deaths of 2 Abbasid caliphs and numerous military leaders, even compelling Saladin, a revered hero of the Islamic world, to withdraw. Yet, at this moment, the fortress was besieged by over 138,000 Mongol warriors assembled in the valley. Their siege machinery relentlessly battered its seemingly impenetrable walls each day, and food supplies were dwindling. Ruknuddin was faced with a pivotal decision, one that would determine not only his own fate, but also that of tens of thousands, including soldiers, families, and children, within more than 100 strongholds that awaited his command. He considered 3 primary courses of action: fighting to the bitter end, thereby preserving honor but incurring unavoidable casualties; surrendering with the slim hope of Mongol clemency; or perhaps, was there a third option? The core dilemma was how to proceed when one is solely responsible for the destiny of so many, and every potential choice carried the risk of catastrophe. Before delving into his controversial decision, please share your current location and time in the comments. I am genuinely curious about the global audience engaging with this content and their respective time zones. Now, to grasp the profound significance of the choice made on that Persian mountaintop, let's journey back 166 years. In 1090, Hassan-i-Sabah, a 40-year-old Persian scholar, encountered what appeared to be an insurmountable challenge. He was a follower of Ismailism, a minor branch of Shia Islam. In a world dominated by the Sunni Seljuk Empire, which governed through brute force, there was no safe haven for individuals like him. They faced relentless persecution, oppression, and extermination. Hassan's predicament was straightforward, yet brutal. How could a minority community, devoid of an army, territory, or military power, survive such a hostile environment? The conventional wisdom dictated that survival was impossible. They would simply be annihilated. However, Hassan adamantly refused to accept this grim prognosis. Hassan recognized a critical truth. He could not defeat the Seljuks in a conventional battlefield confrontation. Their armed forces outnumbered his adherents by a factor of 100. Yet, he realized he didn't need to triumph in direct combat. His aim was merely to make the persecution of his community so costly that their adversaries would think twice before acting. Step 1 involved securing a safe base, a location that the Seljuk army could not easily assault. In 1090, Hassan turned his attention to Alamut Castle, a fortress constructed on a 200-meter-high rock, surrounded by sheer cliffs and accessible only via a single narrow path. But he did not launch a military assault. Instead, he arrived in the Alamut Valley as a teacher and missionary. He educated and assisted the villagers, gradually persuading them to embrace his philosophical tenets. He even swayed the guards stationed within the castle. Then, one day in 1090, without shedding a single drop of blood, the gates of Alamut opened for Hassan. Legend suggests he even compensated the former owner 3,000 gold dinars, as if it were a routine business transaction. This marked his initial triumph, imparting a valuable lesson. Clever strategy sometimes prevails over raw power. Nevertheless, a single secure fortress was insufficient. Hassan required a comprehensive strategy to deter the Seljuks from attacking his communities across Persia. And so, he devised a strategy whose ethical implications continue to be debated some 900 years later. Hassan trained an elite group of warriors known as fidays, a term signifying those ready for self-sacrifice. These individuals did not engage in open warfare. Their mission was distinct: to assassinate influential figures who posed a threat to the Ismaili community. In 1092, the first such assassination reshaped history. Nizam al-Mulk, the chief minister of the Seljuk government and the architect of the anti-Ismaili campaign, was returning home after his workday. A man, disguised as a Sufi, approached him, feigning a request for blessings. In that instant, a knife was plunged into his chest. Nizam al-Mulk, the most powerful individual in the Seljuk Empire after the Sultan, succumbed to his wounds en route home.
Some might label this terrorism, while others would categorize it as asymmetric warfare, the sole recourse for the weak to defend themselves against the powerful. History offers no simple answers, but it undeniably reveals outcomes. Over the ensuing 166 years, formidable empires, the Seljuk, the Abbasid, and even the Crusaders, had to meticulously consider their actions before confronting the Ismailis. They understood that persecuting Ismailis could make them the next target, and no number of bodyguards could guarantee 24/7 protection. During those 166 years, the Nizari Ismailis evolved into an intricate network. They either built or captured over 100 fortresses across Persia and Syria. Each fortress was chosen for its strategic positioning, high altitudes, challenging terrain, independent water sources, and sufficient provisions for multi-year sieges. Alamut became a hub of learning. Hassan established an extensive library, reportedly containing up to 400,000 volumes.
Scholars journeyed there to study astronomy, mathematics, and philosophy. It was not merely a military organization, but also a vital cultural center. The roster of individuals who fell victim to their assassinations reads like a history textbook. 2 Abbasid caliphs, numerous Seljuk generals, and many high-ranking officials. Conrad of Maltferrat, destined to be king of Jerusalem, and even Saladin, a revered figure in the Islamic world, narrowly escaped their attempts on his life on 2 separate occasions. Yet it's crucial to grasp a key point. They weren't indiscriminate killers. Each assassination served a clear political objective, aimed at safeguarding the Ismaili community from perceived threats. This exemplified asymmetrical warfare in its purest form. When direct battlefield victory is unachievable, one seeks to alter the adversary. For 166 years, this strategy proved effective, until they encountered an opponent operating under entirely different principles. While the Nizari Ismailis were constructing their clandestine empire across Persia, a formidable new force was taking shape far to the east. Genghis Khan had unified the Mongol tribes, forging what historians would later describe as the ultimate military machine. What distinguished the Mongols wasn't solely their brutality, though that was certainly a characteristic. Their success stemmed from a blend of flawless organization, unwavering discipline, and most importantly, an unparalleled capacity for learning and adaptation. Confronted with robust fortifications, they adopted siege warfare tactics from the Chinese. When river crossings became necessary, they learned bridge-building techniques from Persian engineers. Their methods were fluid. They consistently sought the optimal approach for every situation. Between 1219 and 1221, the Mongols swept through the Khwarezmian Empire in Central Asia. The devastation wrought served as a stark warning to the entire Islamic world. Cities like Bukhara, Samarkand, and Merv, once jewels of Islamic civilization, were utterly razed. Estimates place the death toll between 2 and 15 million people. However, not every city met destruction. Some communities surrendered immediately and were subjugated. Others resisted and were completely obliterated. The Mongols delivered a simple, brutal message: surrender early and live. Resist, and everyone perishes. You choose. This wasn't mindless violence. It was calculated terror, designed to compel every successive city to seriously consider its options before opposing them. In 1251, Manka Khan, Genghis Khan's grandson, ascended to the position of Great Khan. Surveying the map, he identified 2 remaining obstacles before the Mongols could secure full command over Western Asia: the Abbasid Caliphate in Baghdad, the spiritual heart of the Islamic world, and the Nizari Ismaili strongholds in Persia, regions that had historically vexed every prior empire. Manka entrusted this critical mission to his brother, Hulagu Khan. This choice wasn't based on Hulagu being the most ruthless, but rather because he was the most adept organizer. In October 1253, Hulagu departed Karakoram with an unprecedented army. Comprising over 138,000 warriors, it was not merely cavalry. Hulagu also brought with him 1,000 teams of Chinese engineers, specialists in constructing trebuchets, siege equipment, and assault weapons. This represented a crucial distinction. Previous empires had attempted to assault Nizari fortresses and failed because they possessed only armies. Hulagu, however, possessed advanced technology. The Mongols had learned their lesson from China. While cavalry could sweep across steppes, breaching solid stone walls demanded machinery. The army advanced slowly through Central Asia, taking 2 years to reach Persia. Yet, wherever they went, they consolidated their authority, summoning local rulers and demanding troops and intelligence. This was no fleeting raid. It was a meticulously planned campaign, supported by impeccable logistics, focused on a singular objective: the complete eradication of the Nizari Ismailis. By 1253, while Hulagu was still en route to Persia, the Nizari leadership made a crucial realization. If they allowed Hulagu to arrive in Persia with his full army, they would undoubtedly lose. They needed to thwart this campaign before it truly began, and so they devised a plan so audacious it bordered on madness. Eliminate Möngke Khan, the great Khan of the Mongol Empire, right in his capital at Karakoram. If successful, Hulagu would be forced to return, the Mongol Empire would plunge into a succession crisis, and the campaign would collapse. They selected 400 of their most skilled assassins, who disguised themselves as merchants, missionaries, and pilgrims. Carrying goods and gifts, they embarked on a 1,000-mile journey along the Silk Road eastward, towards the heart of the Mongol Empire. This was arguably the boldest assassination attempt in history. 400 individuals traversing 1,000 miles through hostile territory to assassinate the world's most heavily guarded man. However, the Mongols maintained their own comprehensive intelligence network. Reports emerged of an unusually large merchant caravan heading towards Karakoram. Special security measures were immediately implemented, and the conspiracy was uncovered. The 400 assassins failed. Now, Möngke Khan had not only strategic but also deeply personal reasons for annihilating the Nizaris. In late autumn 1255, Hulagu crossed the Amu Darya River and entered Persia. He did not rush directly to Alamut, which would have been a tactical error. Instead, he employed a systematic siege tactic, what military experts today refer to as peeling the layers of an onion. General Gierkuh was dispatched ahead to assault smaller, remote fortifications within Khuhistan and Kumis. The objective was not an immediate, complete conquest, but rather, firstly, a reconnaissance of the Nizari defenses to comprehend their combat strategies. Secondly, it aimed to isolate Alamut from its supporting strongholds. Thirdly, the campaign sought to sow widespread panic and discord within the Nizari system. Each fallen fortress inflicted a wound upon their network, representing not merely a material loss, but a psychological one. The belief in the invincibility of their fortified system crumbled before their very eyes. In December 1255, amidst this escalating crisis, the Grand Master Alauddin Muhammad passed away. Various accounts exist regarding his demise. Some maintain he was assassinated by his inner circle, those who disagreed with his anti-Mongol policies. The true cause may forever remain a mystery. However, the outcome was undeniable. His son, Rukn al-Din Kursha, at merely 26 years old, was compelled to assume leadership under the most dire circumstances. Imagine yourself in his position, a 26-year-old youth, newly leading a movement, with the world's most formidable military force looming on the horizon. Fortresses were falling daily. Internally, some attributed the provocation of the Mongols to his father's policies. Now, all eyes were fixed on him, anticipating his decision. Rukn al-Din attempted to negotiate. He dispatched envoys to Hulagu, offering allegiance, tribute, and anything to avert an all-out war. Hulagu presented his demands: the demolition of all fortresses, complete unconditional surrender, and the handover of all weaponry. This was a condition Rukn al-Din could not accept, for by dismantling the fortresses, he would forfeit the sole means of defending his community. The Nizari Ismailis would be left utterly vulnerable to anyone seeking to persecute them. Yet, if he did not accept these terms, the war would persist, and another fortress would fall each day. Rukn al-Din found himself caught between two difficult choices. In the autumn of 1256, Mongol forces laid siege to Maimun Diz, the stronghold where Rukn al-Din was situated. For a full week, Mongol mangonels relentlessly bombarded it. Walls several meters thick, constructed over generations, began to crack and disintegrate. Each human-sized stone launched from a mangonel struck with terrifying force. The sound of every impact echoed across the valley. Dust rose after each hit. Inside, provisions dwindled. While water remained available from an independent well, food was scarce. Children began to cry from hunger. Warriors weakened. And each day, Rukn al-Din stood on the walls, gazing down at the Mongol army, realizing he had to make a decision. On November 19, 1256, Rukn al-Din made a choice that shaped history and would be debated for another 770 years. He emerged from the fortress gates unarmed and surrendered to Hulagu Khan. Some historians would later brand this as betrayal, while others would deem it the only realistic option. But to grasp his decision, we must place ourselves in his predicament. Within the fortress walls were not only warriors, but their families, women, and children. Had he fought to the bitter end, the Mongols would have massacred everyone, just as they had done in Khwarazm. Outside, dozens of other fortresses still held out, trusting his leadership. If he perished there, they would lose central command and be vanquished individually. Hulagu had promised mercy if all fortresses surrendered. Other empires in the past had accepted Nizari submission. Why should the Mongols be different? Rukn al-Din likely believed or hoped that by surrendering, he could save at least a portion of his community. He could not have known he was making a terrible error. Following his surrender, Rukn al-Din was commanded to transmit a message to all remaining Nizari strongholds, ordering them to open their gates. Some warriors in the fortresses were suspicious, believing Rukn al-Din was acting under duress. Yet the majority obeyed their imam's command. On December 15, 1256, the gates of Alamut, the fabled fortress that Hassan-i-Saba had seized 166 years prior without spilling a single drop of blood, slowly opened before the Mongol army. They entered. They did not discover paradisiacal gardens or treasure, as Western legends claimed. They found an immense library, perhaps 400,000 volumes. Al-Juwayni, the Persian historian at the Mongol court, received permission to select certain works for preservation. He chose copies of the Quran, several astronomical treatises, and a few Ismaili texts he considered valuable. The remaining hundreds of thousands of volumes on philosophy, science, mathematics, and Ismaili thought were incinerated. We will never know what was lost in those flames. Perhaps there were scientific works far ahead of their time. Perhaps there were philosophies capable of altering our way of thinking. We will never know. But the story did not end there, and this is the most painful part. Rukn al-Din, believing he had fulfilled his part of the bargain, requested an audience with Mongols Khan in Karakoram. He likely intended to negotiate the future of the Nizari Ismailis under Mongol protection. Hulagu granted his request. Rukn al-Din Kursha, accompanied by a small retinue, commenced the arduous journey eastward. Upon reaching Karakoram, Mongols Khan refused an audience, citing that some fortresses, such as Lamasar and Gierkuh, had yet to surrender, thus rendering the agreement incomplete. During his return through Persia, the Mongol escort received final instructions from Mongols Khan. Rukn al-Din Kursha and his companions were executed. In adherence to Mongol custom for rulers, he was trampled by horses, a bloodless demise. Subsequently, a directive was issued across Persia to obliterate all Nizari Ismailis, sparing none. As chronicled by Atta Malik Juvaini, over 100,000 Nizari Ismailis were killed in Persia. In Kuhistan, Mongol commanders gathered Nizaris with promises of amnesty, only to then massacre nearly 12,000 individuals in a single day. The fortress of Lamasar capitulated in January 1257 following a cholera outbreak. However, Gierkuh, a minor stronghold, endured for another 13 years, surrendering solely in 1270. This period undoubtedly marks one of history's most systematic mass exterminations, targeting not merely warriors, but women, children, and all adherents of the Ismaili faith. In 1275, nearly 2 decades after the fall of Alamut, something extraordinary occurred. A man claiming to be Rukn al-Din Kursha's son rallied surviving Nizaris, launching an attack and reclaiming Alamut for several months. The Mongols were compelled to return to retake the fortress. Yet the message was clear. Even after immense devastation, their spirit remained unbroken. Today, 770 years subsequent to these events, the Nizari Ismaili community persists, comprising approximately 15 million people globally across more than 2 countries. Their spiritual leader is the Aga Khan IV, representing the 49th generation descendant of Muhammad. They have abandoned assassination tactics, now contributing to education, healthcare, and social development. They discovered a path to survival not through violence, but through patience, adaptability, and the quiet preservation of their identity. So, what insights can we glean from this history after 770 years? The Nizari Ismailis developed a strategy perfectly tailored to their circumstances: asymmetric warfare. For 166 years, it performed brilliantly. However, when confronted by an adversary possessing superior technology, virtually limitless resources, and, crucially, disregarding previous rules of engagement, this strategy proved insufficient. No strategy remains invincible indefinitely. The world evolves, and what once worked may become obsolete. Rukn al-Din Kersha faced a choice where no option was favorable. Fighting to the bitter end meant immediate death for all. Surrendering offered a slim hope of saving some, but also carried the potential for tragedy. We often tend to evaluate historical decisions from our comfortable vantage points, armed with complete retrospective information. Yet, those making these decisions lacked such foresight. They possessed only dire alternatives and minimal time to decide. Before passing judgment, ask yourself, in their shoes, what would I have done? And be honest. Perhaps the most uplifting lesson is this: despite persecution to near annihilation, the Nizari Ismaili community endured not through aggression, but through perseverance, adaptation, and the silent safeguarding of their heritage. They realized that survival sometimes transcends honor, that bending can be more crucial than breaking, and that altering one's form is occasionally the sole means to preserve one's essence. The ruins of Alamut still stand in Iran's Alborz Mountains, crumbling walls on a windswept crag overlooking a beautiful valley. It is no longer a fortress of assassins, nor a symbol of dread. It is merely a relic, a testament to people who once believed they could thrive through fear, to an empire that once thought it could dominate eternally, and to the inevitable clash when 2 such forces meet. This reminds us that in history, very few things are constant. What appears impregnable can collapse. What seems destroyed can be resurrected. The important thing is not never to fall, but how you rise after falling. Thus, we have together traversed one of history's most dramatic confrontations, where an impregnable citadel met an ideal war machine. Now I want to ask you, if you were Rukn al-Din Kersha on November 19, 1256, standing on the walls of Maimundiz and observing the Mongol army below, knowing your decision would seal the fate of tens of thousands, what would you have done? Fight to the death, surrender with a fragile hope, or is there a third alternative? Share your thoughts in the comments. I genuinely wish to hear your perspective.
And feel free to engage in respectful debate with those who disagree. That is how we learn. If this video provided valuable insight, please click the like button to increase its visibility. Subscribe and activate notifications to avoid missing other profound historical narratives. This story offers not only glimpses into the past, but also lessons applicable to the present. Indeed,